akin.
What's happening, y'all? Excuse me. So I'm back with my next installment of Abuki's take on. And we're going to cover this part, which is about, Quavo being a beta simp, was what the discussion was covering under the main heading of She Does Respect You on Lapeef Talks. So the show starts off with a video of Quavo and Sweetie essentially entering an elevator. And I'm not sure when this took place, but Sweetie apparently was trying to take Quavo's bag, and they were wrestling and tussling over a bag. And basically he put his body between her and the bag and kept, blocking her from getting the bag. And then it looks like he put his hand back behind her, and he basically pulled his bag into the elevator, and she fell back in the elevator as if he, struck her or, something to that degree. Didn't look like he actually did any damage to her or that he made any kind of contact with her whatsoever. But the elevator opened up and some people saw it, and it apparently was an issue. They showed another video of Tom Hanks' son, in a scuffle with his girlfriend. And he was basically just filming her. And she was antagonized by this. And she knocked his phone out of his hand. And when he picked his phone back up, he was bleeding above the eye and down into his face. And he said she had a knife. I didn't see the knife. I'm not sure where this video came from, but apparently the two incidents happened, I guess at the same time, but they were talking about Quavo and Sweetie's situation and not the same situation, if not worse, with Tom Hanks' son. And we've seen this before, where there's a different result if a black man is involved with it. And this was brought up in the show as a topic. So Courtney started out and she started talking about basically what an alpha man was, and tried and basically describing what an alpha man is and why it's, I guess good or favorable to be an alpha. She says that, an alpha man is about his purpose, and a woman follows the alpha's purpose, and, an alpha leads and is assertive and confident, and women just basically fall, I guess, naturally under, the alpha's, I guess, spell or whatnot, and they're inclined to be more attracted to them, which to some degree, I agree with that. She also says that, the alpha tends to bring out the femininity in a woman. And I can agree with that to some degree. I remember how when Tawana went on to Kevin's show, she wasn't as aggressive as she normally was. And I think she was more feminine. I think she was more amicable. Her whole demeanor changed around a man who was basically projecting himself in a way that was confident and not dependent upon the energy that she was giving back. He was who he was without regard to any external forces. And I admire that. And I did see that basically, and I've seen in my life, I've seen how, women, when they're around certain individuals, whether they be dressed a certain way, they carry themselves a certain way, they don't act the same as if as they do if they're around a person who they think to be inferior, whether it be age or whether it's a success thing. There are things that women take in consideration when they are dealing with you as a man. So I think we can all, agree that takes place. And, it's a little bit, it's kind of the same when men are around women. I mean, when a man is around an attractive woman, his whole demeanor changes from the way he is when he's around a regular woman, an average woman. And if a man is around a woman who is less attractive, he may be different in his interaction with her. I think that means we can all, agree on that, so, she goes on to say that betas have submissive qualities, feminine traits, if you would. And women tend to overpower a beta male and they're emotionally similar. She's more inclined to put a beta male in the friend zone. She described it, I think, as a friend zone candidate. Interesting. So, with this part, I think this is an overly simplistic way of looking at alpha and beta male traits. I think they're when you observe any, and these are terms that are associated with predatory behavior. Predators in the wild. That's where this was, where this came from. So I think we find these traits dependent upon the situation in both types of males. But I mean, that's if you're really willing to observe these individuals for a lengthy amount of time and how they interact with certain individuals, males and females. You'll see both traits, like I said, come out of these individuals. So Chicago Rilla goes, he makes a comment. He says, well, basically men learn from females. Well, men learn from failure. From failure. And they emulate, from their failures with women is what I'm trying to say. And basically that after these failures with these women, that they see guys who, don't necessarily kowtow, I guess, to women's whims, and they exhibit asshole behavior, and they end up winning with these women, attractive women, and they're just like, they see this over and over, and then they tend to think that that's how I have to be in order for me to win, So, you go on to end up being the asshole that that you've watched win with these women, and he goes on to to describe, growing up in a household and being influenced by these women who basically taught him, growing up, how he was supposed to act with women. How he basically, you be nice to a woman, you get her flowers, you take her every, want and desire into consideration, and, these women led him, to believe that this was what would make him a viable candidate, to be in a relationship with these women. But he found, like most of us find, that that's not the case, and a lot of women just don't respect men like that, and they tend to think that these men, they'll use them, and they will, they'll get everything that they can from that man. They'll be around him. They'll friend zone him, But these women always undervalue these men, and almost show contempt for these type of men. And he goes on to say that basically, if you're soft, soft begets soft. So I don't know what he meant by that. I mean, I really, but I tend to think that, a man has to be able to, make decisions based off of the information he's given, not be swayed by, external forces to do something that would not be in his best interest. And I think sometimes, men get swayed by women to do what women think is best and not what is actually best in that situation. So I think maybe that's what he was kind of alluding to, and talking about people basically simping, for women, and just becoming soft, moist individuals, And, everybody tends to agree that basically Quavo took a real simpish approach, because he I guess there was another situation that had come about where he basically, instigated this fight. I think I've already covered that, but this was, like I said, a long show, and it covered a lot of different things and about Quavo's behavior and whatnot. So Courtney goes on to say that basically what she prefers in a man is basically an alpha that has beta traits. She wants, and what she means by this is what I think a lot of women really want, is they want a man who they can manipulate. A man who in every aspect is the man that they want them to be, except they want to be able to have a remote control to him, and men don't like that. Men do not like to be manipulated, used, toyed with, but apparently even women who tend to see things from our side, which I think Courtney does, still want to be able to manipulate us in some form or fashion. So, Tawana kicks in finally in the show, and she says she can't relate to any aspect of the beta alpha argument that or topic that they're covering, and she feels that if a woman disrespects a beta male, then it's her fault, and that basically it's a reflection of her character, and I agree with Tuan on that. It is. I mean, I don't think it has as much to do with, that guy and what he's doing. as it is that this woman has a darkness inside of her. She's black-hearted, essentially. You know? And I think every person, but we're starting to see it a lot more in Black women today. We're starting to see, some dark aspects of their behavior. And not all Black women, but I'm saying there are ones out there that no one wants to address. No one wants to even deal with about their behavior, because they know that what they're going to get back is not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be something that they want to really deal with. And then, people are weighing the cost to benefit ratio of that, of dealing with somebody who is a negative individual who feels that, they can essentially be the worst that our community has to offer. So, basically, Chicago Gorilla says at that point that, if this happens, to a beta male, that basically it's a sign of weakness. And it basically sends the wrong message to the woman, I guess, as if to say that, okay, this is how best to handle the situation. And, it basically, denies that man what he needs to, I guess, become stronger, or to be, it was kind of confusing the way they were kind of going at this point. But, I'm going to try to, interpret that a little bit. But, I think from what he was saying earlier, that basically he was saying that, that man has to be able to learn from that failure, and he'll eventually become stronger, or either he'll remain, as a person who basically just goes wherever the wind blows, doesn't stand up for himself, can't adequately handle himself around these stronger types of women. Tawana goes on to say that she basically dated both types of men, alphas and betas. She was saying that basically both were okay, but when she was nailed down, she basically said that she didn't respect men who basically gave her everything she wanted and treated her accordingly, so the way that she wanted to be treated, which is basically what we all say, is that basically you can be everything that a woman wants you to be, and then she still's not going to respect you. So she owned it for the first time, and I'm kind of proud of her. She owned that. So Chicago Rilla then asked, does masculine attract feminine? And Anton says basically that he thinks that women settle for betas and that relationships are transactional. Okay, they are. Relationships are transactional. I think the way we approach relationships now in the modern era is jacked up, really. It's just not, it's not good for really either side. I think women are coming up, I think, being taught by reality TV that, it's okay to use men. It's okay to get everything you can out of a man, and you need to be disrespectful, because there's tons of women out there that say, it's okay for you to slap on your man, talk to him crazy, and, do whatever you want to him. But that man better not raise his hand to you, better not raise his voice to you. A man has zero power to control his relationship, especially when he gets married. When he's in a regular relationship, he can leave. It's harder to leave once you're married, but we're seeing this more and more in our relationships, that there's just disrespectful behavior going on. I think, we all can acknowledge that that's taking place. So then they have a guest come on. His name was Talib. This is when it kind of got kind of funny. Talib thinks that women respect betas as peers, So, and I agree with that. They do. They do. I mean, it's just like, women hanging out with gay guys, or women hanging out with, well, they don't hang out with them, but they friend zone them, and they basically orbit these type of guys, but they don't interact with them, and that's because these guys are not suitable mates. They let these guys hang around them, and they let them, look at them and gawk at them and, buy them things and all of that. So they see them, I think, yeah, I agree with that, as peers, but nobody that they actually have to respect or interact with in a positive way or in a sexual way. And, I say this all the time that, black women nowadays, basically to drop it down to its base form is they want house husbands. They want a husband that is okay with them going out and working and basically coming home, and they say that they're tired from being out and working, which they fought to go out and to have to work, to work because they want to work. But then they say now they characterize it as we have to work. We have to. And Tawana says this, she says this later on in different aspects of the show. She says, well, a woman has to go out and work and has to, get her education and blah, 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 so then, the man is expected when she comes in from work to have to deal with less, to have to accept that she's too tired to spend time with me. She's too tired to, have sex with me. She's too tired to, to cook, basic things to keep up your household. But you fought for that, It's like Kevin says in his show, most of these women, if they had, a choice in the matter, they wouldn't work. They want these men to take care of them. And the man that takes care of them and does all this stuff for them, they will not respect. But that man is handling his business in every way. So what do you call that guy? Do you call that guy beta? Do you call that guy an alpha for having a situation together and basically being able to bag an appropriate wife who basically what these women do is, and we're not addressing this, but these women know how to act appropriately in situations in order to get a man. And then once they get what they wanted out of that man, whether i.e. a relationship, a marriage, and then they're in the great situation. They're not having to work. They're doing all of this other type of stuff, that they want to do. They're taking the trips and all of that. They still don't respect the man. I will submit to you that if you go and you look at this Real Housewives shit that's on TV, you look at all of this reality TV situations that are going on, Basketball Wives and all of that, show me on these shows where they respect their men and where they show, positive dialogue about men in these shows. It's not happening. So Anton basically disagrees, and he says that we're animals, and basically that we react like animals in this situation. Women will respond to the dominant person in this situation. Now we know how Anton feels about this. Anton, he characterizes himself as an alpha male, and I can understand that. I can respect that, but I think men in general, whether you be a dominant personality or not, I think you are, in whatever situation that comes up, you will react appropriately to the situation. Sometimes you can't tell me that Anton has never submitted, in some regard to his wife's request. Does that make him beta? I don't think so. But if we we look at it in a basic way, like we're discussing it, it tends to make people think that, okay, he's a beta because he did this or because he did that. And I think, we have to look at it in a little bit different way. I hope I'm saying this, in a way that you can understand, that doesn't, denigrate his position, So, Chicago Rilla asks, where does a beta man with a woman work? And I say, just like I said before, is that, beta men with a dominant woman works on TV. I mean, we see it all the time. That's what they show on TV. They always show us being, the buffoon on TV and being the person who has to be led, to the right decision or directed in some crazy way to do what's necessary, in the situation. I mean, like I said, you look at all this reality TV, you look at most of the comedies, and the dad is not someone who needs to be respected. The boyfriend's not someone who needs to be respected. He's an idiot, essentially. And, that didn't used to be the case. We had comedies. We also had, different types of media that we could take, that we could consume that didn't direct us to think that, men are stupid. So Tawana says that women who date men who make less are happier in their relationships. And she quotes some article and that supports her position. This is classic Tawana. I don't know where the article was, but that's what the article said. Okay. Now, Tawana went to college. Again, this is not the behavior of somebody who took their studies seriously. But I would recommend that she read The Weaker Sex. And basically, that book basically goes through that, the fact that most of the women, when they're making money, they're making more money than their husbands, that they tend to resent the husband. They think that he's the lucky one, being able to spend time with the family at home. And if that man is successful at cooking and taking care of the kids and all of that, most women think that men can't do that. So if she sees that man being successful as something that she was basically meant to do, she becomes resentful of that man. And it will show in every aspect of their relationship, But somebody's going to get tired of doing without. It always happens. And these women, if you want us to feel sorry for you because you have to work, well, I'm not going to feel sorry for you because that's what you fought for. You subscribed to feminism, which was for you to be able to be independent, go out and get your education, and to go out and have to work and make money. So I don't want to hear that you're tired when you come home. I don't want to hear you're too tired to cook. I don't want to eat fast food shit every night. Those types of things are the things that men have to deal with as a result of you guys being independent. Because you can't have it all. You can't have a job and then have a home that's together, something's gonna be undone. Something's gonna be lacking. Especially if you want a man that's out there making the money to try to provide the lifestyle that you make. Because let's face it, the money that you make is your money. That household's not gonna benefit from the money that you got. That's the money that you floss with, for other women. That's, your nail money, your upkeep money and all of that. But the rest of that money takes care of your lifestyle. So if that's happening, then I would submit that you need to respect the person. Whatever he is, alpha, beta, whatever. If he's providing that lifestyle for you, he's done what he needs to do to earn your respect. So, they go on and they start. This alpha beta thing. It degenerates into craziness, but. They bring up a point that money doesn't make a man an alpha, and, I have to agree with that one. I think that's female logic because, females think that if I'm making money, then that equates to a greater worth for a female, but that's not. That's not how it works. When a man makes more money, he is worth more. That in the situation, a woman looks at him as a better prospect. Whereas if you're making more money as a woman, we don't really look at that. We don't really care about that. No man has ever asked a woman, well, how much money you make, or, where'd you go to school? What's your degree? I don't know anybody that's ever asked a woman that, but they tend to think that these things are, things that we're going to consider. I don't know where they got that from, but Tawana then breaks from logic and linear thinking like Tawana does. And, she reaches for all these other possibilities. It's like Tawana's a part of the but cult. There's always a but. There's always an exception to the rule. I've seen people, that it's the anecdotal evidence that she clings to whenever she gets on the show. And I think it's like clockwork. It's always there. It's always there for our consumption, So, Anton destroys Talib over his past relationships and basically calls him a beta. And, Talib says he's an alpha, but then, they say that, everybody just kind of goes at him and tells him that he's not. And it gets real funny at this point. But Talib basically has a relationship with his ex, and she used to be his wife, but he divorced her because she wasn't, according to him, following his program, which I find nothing wrong with that. And I find that very believable, because, people tend to get mouthy once they get comfortable. And so he divorced her, but he's still taking care of his kids and he's still taking care of her. And he feels like that, that's a positive thing because he is taking care of his responsibilities. Well, Anton and the rest of the gang said that basically, except for Tawana, said that, he's not supposed to be taking care of her. He's only supposed to be taking care of his kids. Well, he said, I'm taking care of her too, because I have to take care of her so that she can take care of my kids. Well, it degenerated into them laughing at him and basically running him off the show. But, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that that's beta behavior. I just think that there's some aspect of that woman that he basically probably feels like needs that assistance in order for her to get things done. I don't know if he's still involved with her, if he's still, interacting with her. I would dare say that he probably is. But that's where, the show ended. Like I said, this was a very, very long show. There was quite a few parts of it that dealt with Quavo and Sweetie and that whole situation. But we all know that these people are dysfunctional ass people. All these, especially, look, the Migos. We talking about Alpha and Beta with the Migos. You guys can't be serious. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna end it there. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Please like, share, and subscribe.
You are listening to Abuki Cabal, the analytical savage.
Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Until the next time.
I feel like a motherless child, a long way from